Today, I am going to talk about an element of fat loss that no one really talks about. Coaches don't talk about it because they don't want to depress you and they don't want to put you off working with them. But I am actually going to tell you some truths about that. And it's because I was tagged in a post last week where apparently some expert had been on Radio 4 and was telling people there's no point trying to lose fat at all because studies show that nearly everyone puts all of the fat back on. So there's literally no point in dieting and you should just all have bariatric surgery instead. So somebody tagged me in this and I actually ended up not commenting because I was in one of those moods where I was just not in the mood for people stupid, basically. Because I would have written something and somebody would have gone, that's not right. I'm just like, I can't be fucking asked today. But I can be asked today, so you get it instead. So the kind of problem with this, or those kind of experts, right, is there's an element of truth in what she was saying. So most people, a very, very high percentage of people, Dr. Ed, heterogeneity. I don't think I know what that means. Of study sample groups. Yeah, are you talking about when one thing happens and they extrapolate it over a larger sample of people and then it ends up not being fucking relevant? I hope that's what it is. Otherwise, I just made myself look stupid on Facebook Live. But yeah, it was very annoying that what this woman was talking about. Zach Lacey, I'm going to ignore you until I get to the end of this because it's actually quite useful, and I know that you'll make it something other than what it is. So yeah, she was saying, you shouldn't bother. Like everyone just needs to have bariatric surgery. Blah 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 blah. Yes, exactly that, Dr. Ed. Yeah. That's exactly what she was saying. She was basically, the worst thing, right, Dr. Ed, you know what I'm going to be talking about now. These things that really fucking annoy me, right, which are people, experts, Radio 4 for fuck's sake, and talking about something that has an element of truth in it, but completely twisting it. So her two bits, which do have a large element of truth, the majority of people put the weight back on. Absolutely. Most people put all of the weight back on that they lose. And secondly, no point doing any exercise because that doesn't help with fat loss. Both of those things are true. Well, not true, like there's no point, but exercise does not help with fat loss and most people put the weight back on that they lose. So both of those things are absolutely true. But this fucking woman was like, don't bother losing weight, don't bother trying to do any exercise, just eat until you get yourself so fucking fat that you need surgery, basically. I won't start talking about bariatric surgery and my thoughts about that because we will be here all day. But it kind of brought up a sort of what I wanted to talk about, which is something that barely any coaches talk about, because they know that if they're honest with you about this, it means that you probably, it'll put you off buying whatever they're fucking selling, right? But I don't give a shit about that. I do, but I don't give a shit enough to not mention it. So most diets, all diets work in the short term, right? And I can see Dr. Ed is talking about bariatric surgery. That works, right? That's basically a fucking intervention, right? That's a last resort. Somebody's going to die. But yeah, all fat loss, all methods, all diets, they work in the short term. Because of course you can restrict your calories for 8 to 12 weeks. But what people don't realize is what happens when you get to your goal weight. So when you lose weight, there are lots of changes that happen, right? So you have changes in like mitochondrial function, your hormones change, your energy expenditure changes, lots of things change. And unfortunately, a lot of these changes persist for years and years, right? So a good study that most people will kind of be aware of is The Biggest Loser. So you know that fucking ridiculous show where they had people like eating 600 calories a day and working out for like 10 hours. They did a study and they revisited a lot of the people 6 years after they'd been on the show. So the average fat loss for most of those participants was 58 kilos. And on average, they'd regained back 41 kilos, right? So they've obviously then regained most of that weight. But interestingly enough, so we know that a thing happens when you lose weight called metabolic adaptation, right? Which is very simply put, is your body down regulates a lot of the processes so that you become more efficient and you don't lose as much fat. You don't burn as much energy. That persists for years. So 6 years after these people have been on an extreme diet, their resting metabolic rate was on average 704 calories less than it should have been for someone of their size who'd never been on a diet, right? So you can see why most people put the fat back on. Because after you finish dieting and you're at your goal weight, you're less metabolically active. Your body is more efficient at using calories, and your fat cells are smaller. And when your fat cells are smaller, there's less leptin, right? Which is they produce less leptin. Which when they don't produce the leptin. I'm kind of splitting hairs now, but the fat cells are smaller. Which means that there's not as much leptin. And leptin is the hormone that makes you feel hungry, makes you feel full, rather. So with all of those changes, you're less active metabolically, you're more efficient, you have less leptin. All of those kind of things mean that when you get to your goal weight, you're basically primed for putting a shitload of weight back on. Like your body, physiologically, your body is primed to put a shitload of weight back on. And then you've also got psychologically, right? So you've been under a period of restriction for a really, really long time. So you're probably fucking starving. Psychologically, you feel like you've been missing out on social occasions, food that you like, all sorts of things for weeks and weeks or months and months. And physiologically, you've got all this shit going on. Which means that you are primed to put a shit ton of weight back on, right? That's what happens. So where most coaches will get you to a fat loss goal, and they might talk to you a little bit about maintaining it. I believe that the most important bit of my job that I do comes after then, right? So if you can't afford to invest in someone like me to help you, right? I would suggest that if you want to lose weight, go and lose the weight yourself, right? Find a diet that you can stick to that is sustainable for you for long enough to get to your goal weight. Once you've got to your goal weight, you need to employ someone. In my opinion, I would say that because I'm talking about me, but other people who do it, not really seeing other people do it, but you need someone to help you to maintain that fat loss and show you how to maintain it. So the first thing you'll look at is reverse dieting, right? So people, and I know that people, when they do reverse dieting, they slowly increase the calories. In my opinion, you need to get out of your calorie deficit as quickly as possible, because otherwise you're just perpetuating all these physiological things that are happening with your body adapting to the amount of calories, right? So you need to reverse diet out of it. And you need to do that with guidance. I'm going to be completely honest. It's not a fucking sales thing, right? But you need someone to help you do this because it's actually quite hard. You're up against all of those factors that I've already spoken about. So you need to get out of the calorie deficit. You need to have psychological and emotional support to stop you going back to the way that you were eating before. Like with a lot of my clients, we talk about, as I go through the process with them, helping them squash the fat person that lives inside their head. Because I have clients all the time who literally have lost shit ton of weight, and they're wearing massive clothes, and they're talking about themselves as though they're still 20 kilos heavier. That is someone who still needs my help and support. Because if you still believe, if you haven't changed your identity and you still believe that you are the fat person that you were 6 months ago, you will end up going back to your old habits, because habits only stick if you change your identity and believe that you're a person that now has these habits, or that's how you live your life, right? So you need to make sure you have all that emotional and psychological support in place, and environmental support, right? If you don't change anything about your situation and your environment and the things that you're surrounded by, people, places, situations, you would go back to your old habits. So think of when you get to your goal weight as starting the recovery process, right? I mean, something that I say to people all the time that I can't believe they don't realize: you should not be on a fucking diet your whole life, right? I know people who've been on diets for fucking years. Like, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. You're not supposed to be on a diet for years. It's a temporary situation, right? But also it is, you know, it's hard on you psychologically, emotionally, physiologically. So you need to treat getting to your goal weight as the beginning of your recovery period. So you need to try and recover that metabolic adaptation to correct your, that energy expenditure. You need to be more intuitive about your hunger and satiety signals and learn actually when you are full and hungry. You need to get, hormonally, you need to recover in terms of like performance, physical and mental, because obviously being in a calorie deficit means that you don't perform well physically, you don't perform optimally physically and mentally. So that needs to recover. Your sleep needs to recover, because that's affected by being in a calorie deficit, right? You need to recover from being on a diet, because a diet is a temporary situation. It's not something that's supposed to go on forever and ever and ever. I'm sorry if that's depressing for people who don't want to hear that when you get to your goal weight. Celebrate your achievement for a little while, but then that's when the hard work starts. And that, in my opinion, is when you actually really need help, professional help, to show you, first of all, to help you recover physiologically and show you how you can do that. I mean, when I work with my clients, we try and mitigate that metabolic adaptation a little bit by taking regular, I fucking hate this phrase, diet breaks. I just basically get them to eat a bit more every so often. And there are other things that we do, like increasing physical activity and stuff like that. But yeah, that metabolic adaptation, you need someone to kind of guide you out of that and then help you with all the other bits and pieces. I'm going to stop now because I get a bit ranty about this. Because it annoys me when I see coaches marketing their services, and talking about getting to goal weight and like as though that's the be all and end all. It's fuck all, in my opinion, right? It's actually, that's when the hard work starts. And people just don't want to tell you that because they want you to buy their thing, basically. That's it. I'll stop ranting. What's going on in the comments? Dr. Ed, if you locked everyone up and forced a calorie restriction, then it would also work. Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I believe too, Dr. Ed. And also, like, I feel like maybe you have more of an opinion or an informed opinion than me on this, Dr. Ed. I feel like people go into bariatric surgery too lightly these days. I think it's maybe because of all of these programs that are on TV, right, showing the process and kind of really normalizing it But without thinking about things like how you absorb nutrients is now affected for the rest of your fucking life. You know, I mean, I know that's probably, you know, a small consideration if you are literally at the point where you are going to die if you don't lose weight soon. But yeah, I just think it just seems to be portrayed as an easy option when it absolutely is not. Private surgery has worse outcomes than NHS because patients don't have to go through months and months of counselling and nutrition before surgery. That's interesting. That's surprising. I'm surprised at that because I know several people who've had bariatric surgery who did not get adequate support after their surgery, NHS-wise, and people who, in fact, put all of the weight back on. You know, and that's obviously some kind of serious psychological stuff going on there to put all of the weight back on despite, you know, having a different physiology. But yeah, that's surprising to me, Dr. Ed. Hey, Sarah, how are you? Yeah, I've actually heard and seen people putting stuff in blenders so they can eat it. Which is, you know, it's quite easy to make a joke about that kind of thing, isn't it? But imagine from a psychological point of view, what place you have to be in to do something like that. You know, it's not being dealt with adequately, in my opinion. I'm not gonna be drawn into my mega rant about this because, yes, exactly. I was reading a paper about that the other day. I won't bore everyone with that as well. Dr. Ed, I don't know. It was on Radio 4 last week. It was a woman. I'm going to find the post that I was tagged in and I'll let you know. But yeah, it's clearly an agenda, right? But I mean, that annoys me, right? When people go, oh, there's no point dieting because you put all the weight back on. Like, what? Well, fucking try. Do you know what I mean? There are other health benefits associated with losing weight that you might temporarily, you know, get the benefit of. So surely it's worth trying, right? Just like, no, just get fatter and fatter and then have surgery. Dr. Ed, we could have some good rants, couldn't we, Dr. Ed? I feel like we need to do some Facebook Lives, maybe. Got my YouTube channel soon. Maybe I'm going to interview you for that. Yeah, exactly. Those, you know, all those TV shows that show people's journeys, and they never go back and visit those people years afterwards, do they? And see the psychological effects for sure. And the lifelong effects of having to live with never being able to eat normally ever again. It's ridiculous. Yep. Let's start a movement, Dr. Ed. I'm not going to do that. Much like advocating against getting clean from substance abuse, using the argument that if you don't try, you'll just fall off the wagon. Yes, I definitely. You know, most people who have substance abuse issues, they are not lucky enough to be successful in their first attempt. It normally takes a few attempts, 3 or 4. Okay. When are you two good? Me and Dr. Ed, we need to do something, don't we, Dr. Ed? Just like some kind of ranty, what can we wind ourselves up about most before we get on a Facebook Live? All of this shit, probably. Anyway, I think that is quite enough ranting from me for today. But I would love to know your thoughts. Like, me saying that to you, right, telling you that actually when you get to your goal weight, that's just the start. Is that depressing? Does that put you off wanting to try? And does that put you off wanting to, you know, are you more likely to go with someone else who tells you that they can just get you to your goal weight and not mention the other stuff? Because that's kind of disingenuous, isn't it, right?